The Great Hall of the Galactic Confederation stretched out like a massive dome under the artificial stars. Thousands of beings from dozens of different worlds filled the curved seats that rose up toward the glowing ceiling. The air buzzed with electronic translators working overtime to convert alien languages into something everyone could understand. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, his blue-scaled skin catching the light as he moved. His forearms gestured dramatically while he spoke, and his voice carried the weight of authority that came from commanding fleets across 3 star systems. Fellow members of the Confederation, Kethvar began, his words echoing through the hall. We face a threat unlike any we have seen in 500 years of galactic peace. The crowd stirred. Whispers and clicks and strange humming sounds filled the air as different species talked among themselves. Everyone knew what this emergency meeting was about, but hearing it spoken out loud made it feel more real. The humans, Kethvar continued, letting the word hang in the air like a curse. In just 50 years since joining our confederation, they have expanded their territory by 300%. They have claimed systems that rightfully belong to older, more established civilizations. They have ignored our treaties and our customs. A tall, thin being with purple skin and no visible mouth stood up from the Andromedan section. When it spoke, its voice came from speakers built into its chest. The humans claim these systems were uninhabited. They say they are only settling, empty worlds. Empty by whose standards? Kethvar shot back. The Crystalline Collective had been slowly growing their settlements in the Vega sector for 2 centuries. The humans moved in with their colony ships and claimed the entire system in less than 5 years. More voices joined the discussion. The insect-like hive queens clicked their approval of Kethvar's words. The floating gas beings from the nebula states pulsed with angry colors. Even the usually peaceful tree folk swayed their branches in what looked like agreement. "What do you propose we do?" asked Ambassador Veltar from the Centauri Republic. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the concern underneath. Kethvar's smile showed rows of sharp teeth. "We give them an ultimatum. The humans must stop their expansion immediately. They must submit to galactic oversight of all their military activities. They must allow our inspectors to examine their weapons and their ships. And if they refuse?" This voice came from the back of the hall, from one of the newer member species. "Then we show them what happens to those who threaten galactic peace," Kethvar said. His voice grew harder. 17 civilizations have already agreed to provide military support. We can field over 50,000 ships. The humans have maybe 3,000 vessels at most. The hall erupted in discussion. Some voices supported the plan. Others worried about starting a war. The noise grew so loud that the speaker had to activate the sonic dampeners to restore order. "The human ambassador wishes to respond," announced the speaker, an ancient being whose species had been mediating galactic disputes for over 1,000 years. The crowd fell silent as General Sarah Chen walked to the central platform. She looked small compared to most of the aliens around her, but she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen real combat. Her gray military uniform was simple and plain next to the elaborate robes and decorative armor worn by other ambassadors. "Honored members of the Confederation," Chen began, her voice clear and steady. "I have listened to Admiral Kethvar's concerns. I understand why our expansion might seem aggressive to species who have lived in the same systems for centuries." She paused and looked around the hall, making eye contact with representatives from different sections. "However, I must remind you that every system we have claimed was indeed uninhabited. We have followed all galactic laws regarding territorial expansion. We have paid the required fees and filed the proper documentation." "Documentation means nothing when you move too fast," Kethvar interrupted. "Your species acts like children who have found a new toy. You grab everything you can reach without thinking about the consequences." Chen's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. Perhaps that is how it appears to species who take centuries to make simple decisions. Humans prefer to act when we see opportunity. The insult was subtle but clear. Several alien representatives made angry noises. Kethvar's scales darkened with rage. Let me make this simple for you, human, Kethvar said, stepping closer to Chen. You have 72 hours to respond to our demands. Stop your expansion, submit to our oversight, accept your place in the Galactic Order. And if we refuse? Chen asked. Then you will face the combined might of 17 civilizations. Over 50,000 ships will converge on your solar system. Your 3,000 vessels will be swept aside like dust in a solar wind. Chen nodded slowly, as if she was really considering the threat. I see. And you believe your numbers guarantee victory? Numbers don't lie, human. Mathematics is the same across all species. Indeed it is. Chen agreed. She pulled out a small communication device and spoke into it. Quietly, the translator picked up only 2 words. Protocol Omega. The message was so brief that most of the aliens assumed it was some kind of formal acknowledgement. They had no way to know that those 2 words would change everything. Admiral Kethvar, Chen said, putting the device away. I will return to Earth immediately to discuss your ultimatum with my government. You will have our answer within 72 hours. Good, Kethvar said. I hope your leaders are wiser than their representative. Chen smiled for the first time since entering the hall. It wasn't a warm smile. Oh, I think you'll find that human leadership is very wise indeed. We have a saying on Earth, speak softly and carry a big stick. Perhaps you should research what that means before your fleets arrive at Sol. She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The alien representatives watched her go, most of them feeling like they had missed something important in the conversation. As Chen's ship departed from the Confederation station, Admiral Kethvar began coordinating with his allies. Fleet commanders across 17 different species started preparing their vessels for war. Supply lines were organized, weapon systems were tested, and battle plans were drawn up. The Zephyrian admiral felt confident about their chances. The humans were newcomers to galactic politics. They had shown skill in colonization and trade, but they had never faced a real military threat. Their ships were fast and efficient, but they lacked the heavy weapons and thick armor of true warships. Kethvar had studied human military history during their pre-space age. They were clever fighters, but they had always relied on surprise and unconventional tactics to overcome stronger enemies. In space, where movement was predictable and sensor technology made surprise nearly impossible, such tactics would be useless. The combined fleet would gather at the edge of human space within 60 hours. If the humans refused to surrender, they would face an overwhelming force that could destroy every human settlement in the galaxy. It would be a quick war, and the galaxy would finally learn to respect the authority of its older civilizations. As Kethvar reviewed the fleet manifests and battle plans, he allowed himself to enjoy the anticipation of victory. Soon, the upstart humans would learn their place in the Galactic Order. The mathematics were simple and undeniable. He had no idea how wrong he was about human mathematics. The combined alien fleet was a sight that would have impressed even the most experienced military commander. 52,000 ships from 17 different civilizations moved through space in perfect formation. The largest vessels were Zephyrian dreadnoughts, each one over 2 kilometers long and bristling with plasma cannons. The Andromedan cruisers looked like crystalline works of art, but their beauty hid devastating energy weapons. The Hive Queens had contributed thousands of smaller fighter craft that moved like deadly swarms of insects. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Righteous Fury, and felt the satisfaction of absolute power. Through the massive viewports, he could see the other command ships of the Allied fleets. Each one represented centuries of military tradition and technological advancement. Status report, Kethvar ordered. His tactical officer, a younger Zephyrian with bright green scales, consulted her displays. All fleets report ready for combat, Admiral. We are currently 48 hours from the Sol system at standard cruising speed. Any response from the humans? Negative, sir. Their government has been silent since Ambassador Chen returned to Earth. Kethvar nodded. He had expected this. The humans were probably scrambling to organize some kind of defense, but what could they really do? Their entire navy consisted of maybe 3,000 ships, and most of those were converted cargo vessels with basic weapons systems. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving reports from our scout ships near human space." "What kind of reports?" "The humans appear to be withdrawing from their outer colonies. Supply ships are evacuating civilians from border systems. Their military vessels are falling back toward the inner systems." This was exactly what Kethvar had hoped to hear. The humans were smart enough to realize they couldn't win a direct confrontation. They were probably planning to make a stand around their homeworld, hoping to inflict enough casualties to negotiate some kind of surrender terms. "Excellent," Kethvar said. "Order all fleets to increase speed. If the humans want to concentrate their forces, we should accommodate them. A single decisive battle is much more efficient than chasing them through dozens of systems." The massive fleet began to accelerate toward Sol. The journey that would normally take 4 days was cut down to less than 2. Kethvar wanted to arrive while the humans were still organizing their defenses, before they had time to set up whatever desperate plan they were working on. As they approached the outer edge of the Sol system, the alien sensors began picking up more detailed information about human activities. The reports confirmed what the scouts had already observed. A full withdrawal was in progress. "They're abandoning the asteroid mining stations," reported the sensor officer. "Multiple cargo convoys heading toward the inner system. Defense platforms in the outer system are powering down." Kethvar studied the tactical displays with growing confidence. The humans were behaving exactly as predicted. They were concentrating everything around Earth and Mars, probably hoping to force a costly siege that would make the aliens think twice about continuing the war. It was a reasonable strategy for a weaker force, but it wouldn't work against overwhelming numbers. The combined fleet could simply surround the inner system and destroy the human defenses piece by piece. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through." General Chen's image appeared on the main view screen. She was standing in what looked like a military command center, with tactical displays and busy personnel visible in the background. "Admiral Kethvar," Chen said, her voice formal and respectful, "I have been authorized by the Earth government to respond to your ultimatum." "Good," Kethvar replied. "I trust your leaders have seen reason." "Indeed they have," Chen said. "We have carefully considered your demands regarding territorial expansion and military oversight. We have also evaluated the fleet you have assembled to enforce these demands." Kethvar waited. The human's tone suggested surrender, but something about her expression bothered him. She looked too calm for someone whose homeworld was about to be attacked. "Our response is as follows," Chen continued. "Humanity formally rejects your ultimatum. We will not cease our expansion. We will not submit to alien oversight, and we will not recognize any authority higher than our own government." The bridge fell silent. Several officers made shocked noises. Kethvar felt his scales darken with anger and disbelief. "You're making a terrible mistake, human," he said. "You face 52,000 ships. Your entire species will be crushed." "Perhaps," Chen said with that same unsettling calm, "but since you have come so far to make your point, we would hate to be poor hosts. I hereby invite your entire fleet to advance to Earth orbit for humanity's formal response to your demands." Kethvar stared at the screen. "You're inviting us to attack you?" "I'm inviting you to witness the true nature of human military power," Chen replied. "Surely with such overwhelming numbers you have nothing to fear from our small fleet." The transmission ended before Kethvar could respond. He stood there for a moment, trying to understand what he had just heard. The human was either completely insane or hiding something important. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "should we proceed with the attack?" Kethvar considered his options. The smart thing would be to approach cautiously, probe the human defenses, and look for whatever trap they might be planning. But that would take time, and it would make him look weak in front of the other fleet commanders. Besides, what could the humans really do? They had maybe 3,000 ships against 52,000. Even if they had some kind of secret weapon, The mathematics were still overwhelming. "Signal all fleets," Kethavar ordered. "We advance to Earth orbit. The humans want to make a dramatic gesture before they surrender. We'll give them that opportunity." The massive alien armada began moving deeper into the Sol system. They passed the abandoned mining stations in the asteroid belt without incident. The outer planets showed no signs of military activity. Jupiter and Saturn hung in space like sleeping giants, their moons dark and empty. As they approached the inner system, the aliens could see Earth growing larger in their viewports. The blue-green world looked peaceful and defensible, surrounded by a modest collection of space stations and defensive platforms. Mars showed similar preparations, with what looked like the bulk of the human fleet positioned between the two worlds. "Human fleet strength?" Kethavar asked. "Approximately 2,800 vessels, sir. Most appear to be converted civilian ships with basic weapons. Maybe 300 dedicated warships. Defense platforms? Perhaps 50 major installations. Standard orbital defense configuration." Kethavar nodded with satisfaction. The humans had gathered everything they had, but it still wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "the human fleet is moving aside." "What do you mean, moving aside?" "They're clearing a path, sir. It looks like they want us to approach Earth directly." Kethavar frowned at his displays. The human ships were indeed repositioning themselves, creating what looked like a corridor leading straight to Earth orbit. It was either a trap or another dramatic gesture. Probably some kind of honor guard formation, he decided. They want to surrender with dignity. But something nagged at him as the alien fleet moved deeper into the system. The humans were too calm, too organized for a species facing extinction. Their ships moved with precision and purpose, not the desperate chaos he would have expected. And there was something else, something his sensors couldn't quite identify. Energy readings that didn't match known human technology. Gravitational anomalies in seemingly empty space. Brief sensor contacts that disappeared when his officers tried to focus on them. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting some unusual readings throughout the system." "What kind of readings?" "Unknown energy signatures. Possible cloaked objects. The patterns are very strange, sir." Kethavar felt a chill run through his scales. "Define strange." "It's almost like the entire system is active, sir, not just the planets and the human ships. Everything. The space itself seems to be generating energy signatures." The Admiral stared at his tactical displays, trying to make sense of what his sensors were telling him. The mathematics had seemed so simple just hours ago. 52,000 ships against 3,000, an overwhelming advantage that guaranteed victory. But as his fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, Kethavar began to suspect that human mathematics might work very differently than he had assumed. The first sign that something was wrong came from the asteroid belt. "Admiral," the sensor officer reported, his voice tight with confusion, "I'm reading massive energy buildups throughout the asteroid field." Kethavar looked at his tactical display. The belt should have been empty space and drifting rocks. Instead, his screens showed dozens of energy signatures blooming like flowers across the region they had passed through just hours earlier. "Clarify that report," he ordered. "Sir, it appears that many of the asteroids weren't asteroids at all. They're powering up. Massive installations hidden inside hollow rocks. The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases." A chill ran through Kethavar's body. The alien fleet had flown straight through the belt without detecting anything unusual. How was that possible? "Show me visual confirmation," he demanded. The main view screen switched to a telescopic view of the asteroid belt. What they saw made several officers gasp in shock. Huge chunks of rock were splitting apart like shells, revealing gleaming metal structures inside. Weapon turrets the size of skyscrapers emerged from camouflaged positions. Energy collectors unfolded like mechanical flowers, drinking power from the distant sun. "By the ancestors," whispered the tactical officer. They turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapons platform. But that was just the beginning. More alerts were flooding in from across the system. Sir, Jupiter is showing massive energy spikes, reported another officer. The readings suggest artificial construction on a planetary scale. That's impossible, Kethvar said. Our long-range surveys showed Jupiter was just a gas giant. Not anymore, sir. The view screen shifted to show Jupiter, and what the aliens saw defied belief. The planet's familiar bands of colored gas were peeling away like a disguise, revealing a metallic superstructure underneath. The entire planet had been hollowed out and converted into something else, something vast and terrible and obviously designed for war. What is that thing? Someone whispered. As if in answer to the question, Jupiter began to move, not the slow, stately orbit of a planet, but the purposeful acceleration of a ship the size of a gas giant, bristling with weapons that could crack moons in half. Saturn is doing the same thing, called out the communications officer, his voice cracking with fear. And the moons of both planets, they're all artificial, they're all moving. Kethvar stared at the displays, trying to process what he was seeing. The humans hadn't just prepared for this battle. They had spent decades, maybe centuries, converting their entire solar system into a weapon. Sir, the sensor officer's voice was barely a whisper. Mercury is accelerating toward our position. They turned their attention to the innermost planet. Mercury had always been an unremarkable world, too close to the sun for comfortable habitation. But now it was moving away from its orbit, and as it moved, it was shedding its rocky outer layer like a snake shedding skin. Underneath was something that made the artificial planets look small by comparison. Mercury wasn't a planet at all. It was a shell built around a contained star, a stellar engine capable of powering weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. How is this possible? Kethvar demanded. Our intelligence reports showed no signs of construction on this scale. His tactical officer was frantically working at her console, pulling up old survey data. Sir, all our information came from standard long-range scans and diplomatic exchanges. The humans must have been using some kind of advanced camouflage technology. For how long? Based on the scale of these constructions, they would have needed at least a century to build all this. A century. The humans had been planning this confrontation since before they had even made contact with galactic civilization. They had been building weapons and fortifications while pretending to be simple explorers and traders. Admiral, the communications officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." General Chen appeared on screen again, but now she was standing in what was clearly a military command center built for war. Tactical displays showed the positions of every alien ship, and human officers worked at stations that monitored weapon systems beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "I hope you're enjoying the tour of our solar system," Chen said pleasantly. "We've put a lot of work into redecorating since we joined the galactic community." "This is impossible," Kethvar said. "You couldn't have hidden construction on this scale." "Admiral, you really should study human history more carefully," Chen replied. "We've been preparing for this moment since we first detected radio signals from other civilizations. Did you think we would venture into a hostile galaxy without taking precautions?" The artificial planets were taking up positions around the alien fleet now. Jupiter moved with impossible grace for something so massive, its weapon systems tracking individual ships. Saturn's rings had revealed themselves to be orbital weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying a dreadnought. "We monitored your civilizations for over 2 centuries before making contact," Chen continued. "We studied your cultures, your technologies, your military capabilities. We knew that eventually some coalition would decide that humanity was expanding too quickly. You've been spying on us for 200 years? Kethvar asked. Spying is such an ugly word. Let's call it intelligence gathering. We needed to know what we were dealing with. Your species are older than us, more established, more experienced with galactic politics, but you made one crucial mistake in your calculations. What mistake? Chen's smile was cold as winter. You assumed we would fight according to your rules. The energy readings from the human weapons were climbing to levels that made no scientific sense. The artificial planets were drawing power directly from the sun itself. channeling stellar energy through systems that shouldn't have been possible to build. The thing about humans, Chen said, is that we don't like to lose. When we see a problem, we solve it. When we face a threat, we prepare for it. And when someone threatens our existence, we make sure it never happens again. HFY's tactical displays were showing weapon signatures that broke every known law of physics. The humans weren't just more advanced than anyone had suspected. They were so far ahead that the comparison was meaningless. Your fleet represents the combined military might of 17 civilizations, Chen continued. Impressive by galactic standards. But you're insects trying to fight a force of nature. You brought 52,000 ships to attack a solar system that has been converted into a single massive weapon. The asteroid belt installations were now fully active, their weapons trained on the alien fleet. Each hidden fortress was larger and more heavily armed than the biggest alien dreadnought, and there were hundreds of them. I'm going to give you a choice, Chen said. You can surrender now and accept that humanity is the dominant military power in this galaxy, or you can find out what happens when you threaten a species that spent 2 centuries preparing for war. HFY looked around his bridge. His officers stared at their displays with expressions of shock and terror. The mathematics had changed completely. They weren't facing 3,000 human ships. They were facing an entire weaponized solar system designed by a species that had been planning this confrontation longer than most galactic civilizations had been spacefaring. You have 30 seconds to decide, Chen said. After that, we begin our demonstration of human military capabilities. The Admiral stared at the tactical display, watching as weapons that could crack planets swiveled to target his fleet. The humans had turned their entire star system into a trap, and 52,000 ships had flown right into it. For the first time in his military career, Admiral HFY understood what it meant to face an enemy that was completely out of his league. Admiral HFY opened his mouth to respond to the human ultimatum, but before he could speak, the demonstration began. It started small, almost gentle by the standards of what the aliens had expected from a space battle. A single beam of coherent energy reached out from one of the asteroid fortresses and touched the shields of a Hive Queen destroyer. The alien ship's defensive systems, which should have been able to withstand direct hits from plasma cannons, simply vanished. Not overwhelmed or burned through, they disappeared as if they had never existed. The beam continued through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. Emergency lights flickered on as the destroyer lost power, life support, and propulsion in less than 3 seconds. The crew was alive, but their ship was completely helpless. That was a demonstration shot, General Chen announced calmly. Your destroyer is disabled but repairable. The crew is unharmed. This is what happens when we don't want to kill you. Before anyone could fully process what they had just witnessed, more beams lanced out from the hidden fortresses. Each one touched a different alien ship with surgical precision. Dreadnoughts that had terrorized star systems found their weapon systems shutting down. Cruisers that had never been defeated in battle discovered that their engines no longer responded to commands. The beams weren't random energy weapons. They were something far more sophisticated, targeted disruptor fields that could selectively disable any technology they touched. In less than 60 seconds, over 300 alien ships had been rendered completely helpless. Impossible, whispered HFY's tactical officer. Our shields are powered by zero-point energy extractors. Nothing should be able to just turn them off. But the humans were just getting started. Jupiter, the artificial planet weapon that had once been a gas giant, turned its attention to the largest concentration of alien ships. Instead of firing conventional weapons, it did something that made the watching aliens question everything they thought they knew about physics. Space itself began to twist around the Jupiter construct. Reality bent and warped as the massive installation generated gravitational fields that shouldn't have been possible. Entire squadrons of alien ships found themselves trapped in artificial gravity wells, unable to move or escape. We call that a stellar gravitational manipulator, Chen explained, as if she was giving a lecture instead of demonstrating weapons of unimaginable power. It allows us to create localized space-time distortions. Your ships aren't damaged, but they're locked in place until we decide to release them. Saturn revealed its own capabilities by opening what looked like dimensional rifts in space. Alien. Ships that had been flying in formation suddenly found themselves scattered across the solar system, as the space around them folded and twisted, not destroyed, not damaged, just relocated to wherever the humans wanted them to be. Spatial displacement technology, Chen said. Very useful for breaking up large formations. The human moon, which had seemed like just another orbital body, split open like a flower to reveal the most terrifying sight yet. Inside was a massive installation that looked like a mechanical eye the size of a small continent. When it focused on the alien fleet, every ship's computer system began shutting down simultaneously. That's our electronic warfare platform, Chen continued. It can take control of any computer system within a light-hour radius. We've temporarily disabled your ship's computers to prevent any unfortunate accidents during this demonstration. Kethvar tried to give orders, but his ship's systems wouldn't respond. Emergency power was still functioning, so the crew could breathe and see, but nothing else worked. They were passengers in their own vessel, helpless observers to humanity's display of technological superiority. But the most shocking demonstration was yet to come. Mercury, the artificial construct built around a contained star, began to glow with an inner light that hurt to look at directly. The stellar engine was powering up, drawing energy from its captive sun and channeling it into weapons that existed, on a scale beyond galactic comprehension. A beam of pure stellar fire reached out from Mercury and touched an empty region of space near the alien fleet. The energy didn't hit any ships, but what it did was somehow worse. The beam created a sphere of controlled nuclear fusion about a kilometer across, a miniature sun that burned with the same intensity as a stellar core. For 30 seconds, the artificial sun hung in space next to the alien fleet, close enough that every ship's hull began heating up from the radiation. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the fusion reaction was somehow turned off, leaving nothing but empty space and the lingering memory of power that could incinerate planets. That was 1% of 1% of our maximum output, Chen said quietly. We could have created that fusion sphere inside your flagship instead of next to it. The silence on the alien bridges was absolute. Seasoned military commanders who had fought in dozens of battles stared at displays showing weapons that existed outside their understanding of what was possible. Now let me explain what has really happened here, Chen continued. You brought 52,000 ships to attack what you thought was a primitive human colony. Instead, you have encountered a stellar engineering project that took us 2 centuries to complete. The displays on human vessels showed the true scope of what they had built. Every major body in the solar system had been converted into a weapons platform. Planets had been hollowed out and rebuilt as mobile fortresses. Moons had been transformed into specialized weapon systems. Even the sun itself had been partially harnessed to power defensive systems that could sterilize entire star systems. We knew this day would come, Chen said. We knew that older civilizations would eventually see us as a threat, so we prepared accordingly. We didn't just build a military. We built a military that could defeat any possible combination of galactic forces. The asteroid belt installations were now revealing their full capabilities. What had looked like hundreds of hidden fortresses were actually thousands. Each one was individually more powerful than the strongest alien dreadnought, and they were all networked together in a defensive system that treated the entire solar system as a single weapon. But here's the thing that should really concern you, Chen continued. This is just our home system. We've had 50 years to prepare defensive installations in every human colony. Every world we've settled has similar preparations, scaled to match the local resources. Kethavar felt his 4 hearts sink as he realized the implications. The humans hadn't just prepared to defend Earth. They had turned every system they controlled into a potential weapons platform. Your intelligence services were correct about one thing, Chen said. Humans do prefer unconventional tactics. We don't fight fair. We don't follow your rules. When we see a potential threat, we spend centuries preparing to eliminate it completely. The admiral looked around his bridge at officers who had commanded fleets across multiple star systems. Some of the most experienced military leaders in galactic history were sitting there looking like children who had just learned that monsters were real. "So here's what's going to happen," Chen announced. "In exactly 1 hour, we're going to release control of your ship's systems. You'll have full power and communications restored. At that point, you can choose to leave our solar system peacefully. Or you can choose to see what our weapons do when we're not trying to be gentle." The miniature sun that Mercury had created was gone, but the memory of its heat still lingered on every alien hull. Every commander in the fleet understood that they had just witnessed a tiny fraction of human capability. "I should mention," Chen added, "that this demonstration was broadcast live to every major world in the galaxy. By now your home governments know exactly what happened here. I imagine they'll have some interesting questions for you when you return." Kethvar closed his eyes and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. An hour ago, he had commanded the most powerful military force in galactic history. Now he was a prisoner in his own ship, at the mercy of weapons that made his entire fleet look like children's toys. The humans had been planning this moment for longer than his species had been spacefaring, and they had planned it perfectly. The hour passed in complete silence. Admiral Kethavar spent those 60 minutes staring at displays that showed the true scope of human preparation. His ship's sensors had been restored to limited function, allowing him to study the weapon systems that surrounded his fleet. The mathematics were clear and brutal. Humanity possessed military technology that was centuries ahead of anything else in the galaxy. When the human-imposed system lockdown ended, emergency power gave way to full operational status across the alien fleet. Communications came back online, bringing a flood of panicked messages from ship commanders who still couldn't quite believe what they had witnessed. "Admiral," his communications officer reported quietly, "we're receiving priority transmissions from 17 different governments. They all want immediate reports on what happened here." Kethvar almost laughed. What had happened here was the complete collapse of every assumption that galactic civilization had made about military power and political authority. How could he explain that in a single hour, humanity had demonstrated the ability to defeat any force that could possibly be assembled against them? "Sir," the tactical officer added, "long-range sensors show that human vessels are taking positions throughout known space. It appears they have military assets in every major star system." Of course they did. The humans hadn't just prepared to defend their own territory. They had been positioning themselves to control the entire galaxy if the need arose. The expansion that had so concerned the alien governments wasn't random colonization. It was the methodical placement of strategic assets across all of known space. General Chen's image appeared on the main view screen, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a group of humans in military uniforms that suggested ranks and authority structures the aliens had never seen before. These weren't the simple colonists and traders that humanity had presented to the galaxy. These were the leaders of a military organization that had been planning galactic conquest for centuries. "Admiral Kethvar," Chen said formally, "I trust your hour of contemplation has been educational." "What do you want?" Kethvar asked, his voice barely steady. "I want to prevent unnecessary bloodshed," Chen replied. "What happened here today was a demonstration, not a battle. Your fleet is intact, your crews are alive, and your ships are functional. This was our gift to you, proof of human capabilities without the massive loss of life that would result from actual combat." She gestured to the tactical displays behind her, which showed real-time positions of every ship in the galaxy. "Our sensor networks have been monitoring galactic civilization for over 2 centuries. We know the location and capability of every military vessel, every defense installation, and every strategic resource in known space. We could have eliminated all galactic military forces simultaneously if we had chosen to do so." The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just been preparing to defend themselves. They had been preparing to conquer the galaxy whenever they decided it was necessary. "But conquest through destruction is wasteful," Chen continued. "We prefer a more elegant solution. We are offering every galactic civilization a choice: voluntary integration into a human-led confederation, or continued existence as supervised territories under human authority. "You're demanding surrender," Kethvar said. "We're offering partnership," Chen corrected. "Species that choose integration will retain their governments, their cultures, and their autonomy in all local matters. They will also gain access to human technology and protection from any external threats." On the view screen, data streams showed the technical specifications of human advances in medicine, agriculture, space travel, and dozens of other fields. The technology they were offering was centuries beyond what galactic civilization had achieved. Those who prefer supervised status will also be protected and supported, but with less autonomy in matters that affect galactic security, Chen explained. "Either way, no species will be destroyed or displaced. We're not interested in genocide or slavery. We want efficient administration of galactic resources and permanent peace between civilizations." Another human officer stepped forward, wearing insignia that suggested authority even higher than Chen's. "I am Fleet Admiral Harrison, overall commander of human strategic forces. Let me be absolutely clear about our position. This transition is going to happen whether you cooperate or not. The only question is whether it happens peacefully or through military action." Harrison gestured, and the tactical displays shifted to show human assets throughout the galaxy. There were installations in every major system, fleets positioned near every significant world, and monitoring stations that covered all important space lanes. "We have been preparing for this transition for 200 years, Harrison continued. "Every aspect has been planned, every contingency considered. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force, but cooperation will be rewarded with benefits that no galactic civilization has ever enjoyed." Kethvar looked around his bridge at officers who represented some of the finest military minds in galactic history. They were all staring at displays that showed the complete futility of any military resistance to human authority. "What about our governments?" Kethvar asked. "Our peoples? Do we have no say in this decision?" "Of course you do," Chen replied. "Every civilization will be given time to debate and decide their preferred relationship with humanity. We're not demanding immediate answers, but the decision must be made within one standard galactic year. And if we refuse both options?" Harrison's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop. "Admiral, you have just witnessed a gentle demonstration of human military capabilities. I strongly recommend that you don't require a more comprehensive display of what we can do when we're not concerned about avoiding casualties." The threat was clear. Humanity had proven they could disable any galactic fleet without destroying it. The implication was that they could just as easily destroy any fleet without the pretense of mercy. "We are not conquerors in the traditional sense," Chen added, her tone becoming more diplomatic. "We don't want slaves or tribute or submission ceremonies. We want stability, efficiency, and progress. Under human leadership, galactic civilization will advance faster and farther than it ever could under the old system of competing governments and territorial disputes." She activated a holographic display that showed long-term projections for galactic development under human administration. The models predicted advances in technology, medicine, and quality of life that would have taken millennia under the old system. "We're offering you the chance to be part of something unprecedented in galactic history," Chen said. "A unified civilization that spans multiple star systems, guided by the species that has proven most capable of strategic planning and technological advancement." Kethvar realized that he was witnessing the end of galactic civilization as it had existed for thousands of years. The old system of independent governments and territorial competition was over. Humanity had made sure of that by achieving such overwhelming technological and military superiority that resistance was meaningless. "You have 1 hour to transmit our offer to your respective governments," Harrison announced. "After that, your fleets will be escorted to the edge of the solar system and allowed to depart. We suggest you use the journey home to prepare your peoples for the changes that are coming." The transmission ended, leaving the alien fleet alone with their thoughts and their fears. Around them, the human installations continued their patient watch, weapons that could sterilize star systems waiting for any sign of continued hostility. Kethavar began composing his report to the Zephyrian High Command, trying to find words to explain what had happened. How could he tell them that the humans had spent centuries secretly building weapons that made galactic military power obsolete? How could he explain that the choice was no longer between war and peace, but between willing cooperation and forced supervision? As his ship prepared to leave the Sol system, Kethavar took one last look at Earth. The small blue-green world looked innocent and peaceful, nothing like the center of an empire that now controlled the destiny of every civilization in the galaxy. The humans had been right about one thing: they didn't fight fair. They had planned this moment for longer than most species had been spacefaring, and they had planned it perfectly. The age of human dominance had begun, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it.